So since we're streaming, I suppose we can take down our presentation now, Shawn, and then we'll wait for you to introduce or the chairs to introduce and we'll put back on. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, great.
I just moved, so I'm like in the middle of chaos, like trying to not let things fall down. But if you hear crashes, don't worry. Hey, Nora, do you want to unmute yourself to test your sound
Yeah, can you hear me?
perfectly?
Great.
And it's just a minute away from 6:30. We are streaming, and I did have about 4 or 5 people who had signed up tonight from the public, so I'll leave it to you if you want to give 1, 2, or 3 extra minutes after 6:30 to see who signs on and then get going.
Okay.
All right, folks. This meeting is going to be conducted by Nora Pena from the Transportation Committee is going to kick us off. The Transportation Co-Chair Benjamin Bendet will jump on a little bit later as soon as he can, but we are in very capable hands in the meantime. So Nora, whenever you want to get started, take it away.
Great. Good afternoon, late evening, everyone. It's Thursday, March 26th. We are starting the Transportation Committee meeting for CB14. We have 4 points on the agenda. Our first person will be talking about the IBX, update on the project design and environmental review process. Someone from the MTA is here. Yes.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for having us. My name is Katerina Patori, and I'm excited to get started whenever you're ready. Great. So thank you all for having us this evening. My name is, as I just said, Katerina Patori. I'm a member of MTA's Government Community Relations team. I'm joined this evening by several of my colleagues on the IBX project team, including Charlie Gans, project executive, as well as Ali Sutherland Brown, Katie Kasky, Abdo Alam, Daphne Lasky, and then of course you might recognize some of our other government community relations representatives, Megan Flynn and Jason Greenberg. So we're very excited today to be here to present to you on the Interborough Express. This is a project that's been a long time coming, but we're very excited that we have, as of now, officially begun the preliminary design for the project. So with that, we have a presentation prepared for you this evening. We will have some time as well for Q&A at the end of the presentation. We may not be able to answer all of your questions at this time, as we are sort of in the beginning stages of our project design. But just to reiterate that this is not, the last time that you'll be seeing us. This is just the first of many touch points that we'll have with you on the project. So we look forward to answering questions not only this evening, but really going forward into the future as we make progress on our design and really look for opportunities to get more of your feedback and input. So with that, I will pass it over to Ali, who will begin to take us through the presentation. Thanks all.
Thanks so much, Katerina, and everybody can see my screen? Okay, great. So I'm sure many of you know about this already. For those who don't, what is MTA's Interborough Express? IBX is a proposed light rail line that would provide a transformative new connection between Brooklyn and Queens. And the good news is we can do this within an existing piece of infrastructure, a rail corridor that is currently used for freight. As you see on the map here, the existing corridor spans from Brooklyn in the south, starting in Sunset Park, and goes all the way up to Jackson Heights in Queens to the north. And it's currently used by several freight trains a day, I think 1 to 3. And IBX is adding a passenger service to this existing corridor while preserving that freight service. So essentially, IBX would be running on one side with freight on the other, but they're two entirely separate systems. Much of the corridor is already owned by MTA, about 11 miles of it, with a portion north of Metropolitan Avenue owned by CSX, which is a private freight operator. Before we go further, though, I just want to back up for 1 second to talk about how we got here and give you a little bit of a history of the corridor. Passenger service originally began in the 1870s, but there actually hasn't been a passenger car on this corridor since 1924. And the idea to do something else in this right-of-way percolated for a while and was really revived by the Regional Plan Association with their third regional plan in 1996. It's then been the last sort of 6 to 7 years that the idea for IBX was picked up by the MTA and developed in more detail. So in 2022, the MTA released a feasibility study, late 2021 to January 2022. In 2022, the governor also identified this as a project she wanted to see happen and directed the MTA to commence environmental review. In 2023, MTA released a PEL study, or a Planning and Environmental Linkages study, and hired an environmental consultant. And then last year, MTA retained an engineer to begin the design, which really brings us up to today. So that means today, an 18-station program designed to maximize existing connections to the existing transit and major roadway network, specifically connecting to 17 subway lines, over 50 bus routes, and the Long Island Railroad. And we use the word connection a lot when we talk about this project. And I want to get even more specific about what this connection actually does for residents and businesses, specifically here for Community Board 14. At a high level, this means time that you and your neighbors get back for yourself, for your family, for your friends, and then access to opportunity that IBX unlocks. So, Community District 14 is currently served by 21 bus routes and 5 subway lines, and IBX would introduce 3 stops in district, at McDonald's, at East 16th Street, and at Flatbush Nostrand. But what do these stops sort of really do? At Flatbush Nostrand, the area reachable within a 30-minute transit trip is more than doubled when you introduce IBX. And you can see what's accessible today in this sort of darker purple, and how IBX expands what we call the transit shed, again, where you can get to in 30 minutes on public transportation. So at a high level, this means that residents gain access to jobs and employment hubs, amenities, recreation, and more. And businesses expand their customer bases multifold, as well as the pool of talent who are sort of able and willing to come to work for them. And neighborhoods and destinations for CB 14 really expand across the 2 boroughs, as far north as Jackson Heights, as far to the northwest to Brooklyn Bridge Park, and in the southwest to Sunset Park and Brooklyn Army Terminal. Just using Flatbush Nostrand as an example, this means more than doubling the number of jobs, healthcare facilities, and daycare and pre-K that are accessible, increasing higher ed institutions by about 1.4 times, almost doubling the number of cultural institutions reachable in 30 minutes, and then for those businesses, reaching over 2 times the working age population who could shop at, join, work at your organization. We've developed these slides for all 18 IBX stations, and I'm happy to come back to the East 16th and McDonald versions in Q&A. So finally, before I hand it over to Katie, I want to talk about the 2 simultaneous moving parts to the project right now. And those are environmental review, and then Katie will talk you through design. So MTA kicked off the SECRA process in October 2025, and this included a scoping phase where we were defining what's being studied, and we did this with 2 in-person and 2 virtual meetings. Through that process, we received over 500 comments and are in the process of incorporating those right now into our scope of work. Later this year, MTA will publish a final scoping document along with the DEIS, or Draft Environmental Impact Statement, which will outline both those potential impacts and mitigations to those impacts. Also included in the DEIS is information about property acquisition, which we know is a big concern for people living along the corridor. So first, I'll say, because IBX is located within an existing rail corridor, we have the benefit of using this existing piece of infrastructure and limiting the need to acquire private property. But that said, our number of acquisitions will not be 0, and a small number of properties will need to be acquired for IBX to function. We're studying this, as I said, as part of the environmental review process, and we'll have more information about those impacts later this year. In short here, it's number 1, we're committed to minimizing those property acquisitions. Number 2, when acquisitions are absolutely necessary, we're committed to minimizing residential acquisitions. And then number 3, when acquisitions are necessary, we will go through a highly regulated process governed by the Uniform Relocation Act, with more information coming in that draft EIS later this year. So that's all to say, Thank you for your patience. We know this is a big topic of concern and discussion with folks. We will have answers for you later this year, and in the meantime are committed to being as careful and as thoughtful as we can be about sort of studying those existing conditions and what that ultimately means for nearby property. So Katie, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Allie. So the next update I'm going to give is about the project design process. And this is really the phase of the work where we turn conceptual ideas into more detailed plans. And it's roughly a 2-year process that involves 3 major work streams. And as Allie had mentioned before, late last year, MTA retained a general engineering consultant for a 2-year contract to help with this design work. As I mentioned, there's 3 components to this work. The first is due diligence, which consists of data collection, surveying, and other geotechnical work, which is basically collecting the information about existing conditions that will inform the civil design work. The civil design work is the second component, and you can think of this work as designing the heavy infrastructure elements like bridges, train tracks, retaining walls, and structures. And this work is what gets the corridor ready to receive the new transit service. And then third component is called system design, which includes designing elements specific to the transit service, like stations, vehicle storage facilities, and the systems that allow the trains to communicate with each other. And after this design work is complete, the team will compile all of this information into what we call bid packages, which we will use to select contractors for construction. And so now diving into a little bit of the active work. As part of due diligence, the design team has been out collecting information about the existing conditions. And this information that we collect will tell us about the project's feasibility and any changes we might need to make from early assumptions in early planning stages based on the real world conditions of the corridor. We started this fieldwork at the south end of the corridor in late 2025 and are largely working our way north. And we anticipate this work being complete in the fall of 2026. Just for kind of an update for your area specifically, in Brooklyn, we are roughly halfway complete, but for Community Board 14, we've completed 44 investigations with 7 more to go. So while we're largely complete in the area, you can still expect to see crews out working along the corridor in the upcoming months. Along with this work, the design team has been out flyering within the community to inform people of the work that's happening. And we provide notice roughly 2 weeks beforehand to addresses within 100 feet of the work locations. And we've also been contacting properties close to each location directly to ensure minimal disruption and maximum coordination. So now to dive into another active work stream, which is the systems design. This is the portion of the work, this work began in fall of last year as well and continues into today. And this, as we had designed the stations and the urban realm, we are really prioritizing a number of things like creating a positive future passenger experience, stations that integrate well into the surrounding neighborhoods, accessibility, and connections with other modes of transportation. But as we do this design work, we also want to know what matters to you all and your neighbors. And we will be hosting 6 public workshops in April and May of this year to ask for input on these and related items. And Katerina will talk a little bit more about that in the end. And so now transitioning to community focus areas. So that now that we've walked through the current work, we want to just talk a little bit about what we've heard from previous public outreach and how it's informing our design choices as we're in this design phase now. So the first topic I want to talk about is stormwater management. And our goal here is really to be a good neighbor, which means that we need to work across government with the agencies that manage other city infrastructure like water and sewer systems. We've been meeting with the city's Department of Environmental Protection to understand current conditions and to coordinate for design. We know that portions of the corridor, which are currently a trench, have flooding issues today. And you can see that in the photo here near 65th Street Yard. So we need to be comprehensive and look at stormwater and flooding today and think about adaptation for the future. Our entire transit network needs to be resilient to meet New Yorkers' needs, and our engineers are working on a resilience plan that is customized for each and every neighborhood along the corridor. The second topic we've heard about and want to address is the electrical grid capacity. And similar to how we're thinking about stormwater management, our team is studying the resiliency measures for electrical design. We've heard from the community about grid reliability and capacity, and we want to get ahead of infrastructure capacity issues. Our team has been meeting with Con Edison to understand current conditions and coordinate integrating IBX into the system. It's critically important that we align with the utility providers to ensure that IBX electrical needs can be met by the grid today and tomorrow. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Katerina, who will talk about next steps and upcoming outreach.
Thank you so much, Katie. We are just extremely excited to be sort of in the design phase in earnest and doing sort of a more robust public outreach campaign this spring. So we talked a little bit about the public workshops, but really that's going to be one of our main sort of touch points with the community in order to inform our design decisions. So please look out for those dates and locations coming out soon. But really, these are going to be focused on getting specific feedback, input on a number of things like stations, urban realm connections, layout of our vehicles, and other things like safety and wayfinding customer experience items in the system. We also are going to follow up to receive formal comments on the DEIS as part of our environmental review process. And again, that is coming out later in the fall of this year. So one, big takeaway here is we really want to meet people where they are. We really want to get as much feedback from neighborhoods as possible, especially on the specifics of how the IBX will be utilized, how it will serve these communities. Really, you know your community the best. So if you have input or suggestions for us on locations we should go to, groups we should talk to, meetings that we might want to attend, we are very happy to take those suggestions today or anytime, within the next couple of weeks, months, really. We're looking forward to keeping in touch, as I said, throughout the life of this project. And just a quick sort of recap summary of what we've done to date. We've had a couple of open houses. We've had a couple of pop-ups. Those were events that happened throughout the existing stations in the system. And then, of course, the seeker scoping meetings and our quarterly community council meeting, which is really a virtual space for our community partners to get regular updates on the project. So we look forward to continuing those outreach streams as well. And then finally, for next steps, what can you expect to see over the next couple of months, years on the IBX? As already mentioned, we are well underway on our due diligence work. That work will then inform our civil design, which we expect to start later this year, and then our systems design. So this is really the crux of the design work that will get the corridor ready to kind of receive the IBX. All of that will eventually lead to what we call a contractor package, which is really the first moment that we bring on a potential contractor to start thinking about construction. And currently, we're anticipating that to happen sometime in the winter of 2027. Final point here, the outreach we will continue to do throughout all of these streams. We really want to make sure that everyone is kept up to date on all of these milestones and on all of these sort of phases as we continue through working through the design. So we will make sure to continue to keep the community board informed as well as our elected officials, and then all the groups that we identify in each neighborhood throughout the corridor. So with that, I will open up the floor, or not the floor. I'll give it back to you, Shawn, to open us up to Q&A. We are excited to be here to answer your questions. As I said before, there may be certain questions that we don't have the complete picture or the complete answer for you today, but we're happy to take any question, and of course continue to be in touch with you as you speak to your neighbors and maybe have more questions for us on the project. So thanks again for your time, and Shawn, back to you.
And then I'm going to pass it to Nora. I'm not seeing any hands up, but I would be surprised if there were no questions.
Thanks, Shawn. Any questions out there? You can unmute yourself if you'd like.
Go ahead, Liz.
Hey, I'm Elizabeth Denny is one of the board members. I guess one question I have, definitely, very thorough presentation. I'm sure we might come up with questions more in the future as this work keeps going. Is just how is MTA working with DOT to make sure that there is like increased street connectivity to these additional stations, like making sure that there's like bus lanes or bike lanes or pedestrian safety improvements where there will be additional volume of people?
That's a great question. Charlie, do you want to talk through a little bit of our coordination efforts thus far?
Yeah, happy to. Thank you for the question. I think that the short answer is that we are constantly talking to DOT on these topics, and we've had a really good dialogue. We also, I think, we're trying to be comprehensive as we're looking at the stations, and we're not just isolating it at, okay, what is our footprint going to be? We are trying to focus on what are the connections to existing other transit options, other transportation options. What are the interfaces with the neighborhood? What are the pedestrian flows around? Like really trying to get to a granular level to understand how the areas that we're putting these features in are currently used. So there's, like I said, there's just we're probably meeting with them every other week at this point. But I think importantly, we're going to have these workshops. This is exactly the type of thing that we want to hear from the public on, particularly like these plazas where we're really going to need, partnership with DOT to execute on. So really encourage you and your neighbors to come to those workshops.
Thanks, Charlie. And yeah, just another plug for those workshops. One of the key things that we're looking for is how you plan to use the IBX, how you plan to get to the stations, what you kind of um, would like to see as part of the passenger experience. So all of that relates to the work that we're going to do with our partner city agencies to make sure that the urban realm is best served to partner with the IBX.
Great. Any other questions?
I have.
Go ahead, Nina.
So first question is, I know you said you're going to try to minimize having to acquire, say, private homes. How much heads up are people going to get, and will they be reimbursed at a realistic market rate because they're going to have to rehome themselves, obviously? So that's question number one. Question number two is just some questions about the infrastructure within the stations themselves, public restrooms, maybe like a kiosk of some sort where people could get coffee or tea or whatever on their way to work. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. Charlie, I'll kick both of those back to you.
Great, thank you, and thank you for the questions. So on property acquisition, just a little bit more on the timeline. So as my colleagues mentioned, we are out in the field right now doing surveys, and of course, we have to understand exactly where everything is first, and then we sort of layer the design on top of it. So that kind of data collection work is going to be wrapping up like late spring, early summer, and then we layer the design work on top of it, and the intent is that that information that informs the property acquisitions that would be released within the DEIS that is going to come out at the end of this year. So that the process for the property acquisitions, it's a very regulated process. We have to, following both federal and state regulations on that. And so, releasing it through the DEIS is the method that we're kind of obligated to follow. So the end of the year is when that information would be coming out. And then compensation would follow federal and state regulations. We anticipate that any acquisitions that would be necessary would be compensated. On the second question, with infrastructure and the stations, I think there's some interesting opportunities. We sort of is similar to the question before about plazas. there's an opportunity to catalyze, use this project to kind of catalyze other investment that the city is looking to do. And I think that, you know, eh, not just, outside the station footprint, in the plazas, there's opportunities within the stations as well. And this is, again, another topic that we really want to get feedback from people at the workshops. So, I think at this point, it's early enough in the design process. Everything is on the table effectively. And we want to hear everybody's ideas.
Yeah,
Great.
we really appreciate the question. It's the exact kind of thing we'll be looking at in very close detail at the workshops. Um, Building, the stations gives us an opportunity to make improvements sort of from jump, such as, making sure they're all accessible and things like that. So if there are, specific things that you think that are sort of needed in the community or needed at transit connections in the community, that's something we definitely want to hear about as we put together the design.
The next hands up are in this order: Roe Ford, then EB, then Lisa Derrick.
Thanks, Sean. I'll jump in. Charlie, I heard you mention plazas and the possibility to collaborate between MTA and DOT. Are you familiar with Newkirk Plaza?
I am a little bit. I've been on it a couple times. Yes.
Yeah, it's an existing plaza in our community. It's serviced by the B and Q trains of the subway system, and it's a real issue in the community. It currently lacks safety lighting, a wayfinding system, flood mitigation, and drainage improvements, among other things. And you may know that there's an ongoing conversation dispute about MTA or DOT ownership of these issues, among other greater safety issues. So I think as you're doing your fact finding and community surveys, finding a way for the oversight, support, and responsibility for that plaza that's been an ongoing issue here for decades would be really appreciated before we um, before we go into talking about the next one. And I think that that would go a long way in building trust in this community that has seen this plaza really have no ownership. The DOT is saying it's an MTA issue, MTA is saying it's a DOT issue, to the point that people go out of their way to avoid it because of real concerns. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, Ro, I'm happy to jump in here since this is sort of a more ongoing MTA item that's not necessarily an IBX item, though absolutely understood on the point that as it relates to IBX, when it comes to any sort of jurisdiction issues with plazas or coordination issues with DOT, that we kind of handle those early. So heard on that point. But we look forward to giving you the update on Newkirk Plaza soon. We know how important that location is to this community. So as it relates to the IBX, we'll make sure that, any kind of, if there are any areas where jurisdiction is not, sort of codified already, that we are handling those early on as part of this, as part of the IBX project.
EB.
I'm next. My name is Elizabeth Browner. Sorry about the EB. I live in a community right south of the tracks, at between 16th and 18th Street. East 17th Street is one of the access points currently to get to the tracks. And my main concern is that during the construction phase, will all of the construction vehicles be going through our street? And there's also going to be at 16th Street, there's going to be a station from what I understand. So I'm concerned about potentially living here 10 years under construction. If you could say something about that. And I'm sorry, I came into the meeting late. I had difficulties getting into, but I'm glad I was able to. Thank you.
Before you jump
Well,
into
thank.
answer, I just want to reassure everybody that this meeting is recorded and gets posted onto our website. So the discussion and answers will be a resource ongoingly. Thanks. Go ahead, Charlie. Thanks.
Yeah, I was just going to first thank you for your question. So the construction phasing and logistics is going to be tricky. I think you're absolutely right. There are limited areas that we can access the corridor. And that is something that we are studying within the environmental impact study. So there will be a whole chapter kind of walking through how we think the construction phasing is going to end up playing out. We're cognizant that these are residential neighborhoods, and in a lot of cases, we're talking like small single family homes. So we understand the context that we're working in, and we're trying to be as thoughtful as we can, but we'll fully lay out that plan in the environmental impact study, and then we'll basically it'll get issued as a draft, and then we'll invite comments on that and hold hearings on that so we can get more feedback. So we don't have all the phasing and logistics figured out quite yet, but we will release something by the end of the year on this.
Can I just add, please, that where we are here is not single family homes, but it's a large co-op with 375 units. And we're directly at between 16th Street and East 18th Street. So it is residential, and there's lots and lots of families here, not just a few family homes.
Understood, and that was not meant to diminish the impact on larger buildings as well.
Yeah, I think our team here is taking notes on your location, so we'll make sure that we're looking at that specifically. But something that the contractor, so we mentioned there will be a sort of contractor package going out, and something that happens during that phase is we really try to make, whoever that contractor is that's going to eventually lead the construction, that they really put together a very sort of thorough means and methods. So this is, how they are going to actually do this, and we will strive to minimize impacts that that goes to things like noise, temporary sort of material storage, all of those things. We will try to make sure that not only is that minimized as much as possible, but that when we get to that phase of the project, we will be communicating with whoever is directly near any kind of construction directly sort of throughout. So that way we can make sure that you're prepared and we're coordinated as much as possible. But we will take a look at that specific location and make sure it's flagged as we keep working on this.
Lisa?
Hi there, good evening. So there's been a number of community engagements and workshops that have taken place within the community, and we appreciate that being updated on what's going on. Just out of curiosity, I'd like to know what percentage of the feedback that you're getting from the community is actually being incorporated into the plans and designs that you're putting into the IDX.
Katerina,
Sorry,
can
Charlie,
I jump in?
I saw you unmute, so I don't know if you had something you want to jump in with, but happy to add in anything.
So, well, yeah, first, thank you for the question. And we've done extensive outreach. We did open houses, and we have saved every single Post-it note and that was put on our placards, and have put everything into a database that we're tracking. It's something that we're still discussing internally, kind of how to grapple with this, because it is a bit of an information overload. And a lot of the comments that we get are not necessarily, please move the station here. It's sort of general, like, we're in favor of the project. When's it going to happen? So I think the answer is that we have incorporated information from the open houses. I can't necessarily say what percentages we've done, but we are tracking all the information we're getting, and we are building systems to try to sort it and ensure that it is baked into our design as it goes out.
Also,
And
Charlie,
Charlie,
I
if I,
think
if I
there
may,
have been Sorry, someone, Allie, feel free to jump in.
No, Katarina, go for it.
I just wanted to point out that there have been a couple of examples so far on things that we've adjusted on the project due to sort of feedback we heard from the public. So, Charlie, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the sort of tunneling approach that we implemented, and then also some changes in the East New York section of the corridor that we implemented. So there have been already changes that we've made just from feedback that we've heard. But again, we will continue to sort of do that because this is really the point where we're kind of getting into sort of the weeds of some of these design decisions. So we've made some sort of more kind of big picture changes on the preliminary community feedback we heard, and now we're kind of looking at more of the sort of finer details. But Charlie can give you a little bit more information on those examples of things we've implemented so far.
Yeah, that's right, Katerina. So we got extensive feedback. There was a section in Queens where we were actually exiting the right of way and running on Metropolitan Avenue, and then also cutting through some back streets. And this was to avoid building a new tunnel and under Metropolitan Avenue and the cemetery to the north of that. And we, had extensive engagement in Queens, and the message was very clear that street running was not desired. So we have been, coming up with different, design ideas and how to execute on a tunnel option that can work for, managing traffic on Metropolitan Avenue and also work for the cemetery as well. And we've been speaking with them regularly. So that is a great example of the feedback that we got and major change we made to the project. Another one that Katerina mentioned in East New York, we got feedback on the station location that people desired that it be moved further north, closer to Broadway Junction. And so last year we announced that design change to do just that. So the station is now moved north about a block, and it's now on the other side of Atlantic Avenue, which is a really complicated avenue to cross. So yeah, those are two examples of feedback that's already been incorporated, but it's an ongoing process and something we take very seriously.
Yeah, and obviously those two examples not in this district, but really just examples of how we are really listening, and we'll continue to make sure that major feedback on any decision is taken into account as much as we can.
I'm going to jump in on that point because and some of these things have been answered previously in other meetings and conversations I've had with you and your publicly facing events like at Brooklyn College. But because this is the meeting that will live on Community Board 14's website, I just want to mark a couple of things. So bear with me, please. Kind of to emphasize the point that Regine Ford made about your other assets in our district, to the extent that things are not always well maintained now, it reflects on people's sort of enthusiasm about the idea of new assets. So we really hope that some of the repairs and the maintenance of station houses and such that gets taken into account with some of our ongoing requests. And the East 15th Street, what had been like the old gear house, and that was up for an RFP at one point, and now it's just a sort of barren lot with the gear house. I can get you the exact address, but it's a mess. I think MTA took it back from RFPing it, if that can be a verb. And I don't know if that's related to the IBX project, but that it does need some attention, and especially if it's related, I think it sort of rolls out the carpet a lot better. You have, the benefits of this, I think, are easy to sell. It's going to have great broad benefit, but the local pain points is going to change the quality of life, to Elizabeth's point, in terms of station houses and foot traffic and different noise levels and different lighting levels. So I appreciate that you're going to be hearing the hyper-local concerns as the assets around those homeowners and renters change. And then I want to ask this because Charlie, I think you had a really elegant answer. And again, just to mark what the answers to some outstanding concerns or concerns we hear now and again are, if you could ease the concern that people have about interaction between this project and the Buckeye pipeline, that would be a great thing to have on this meeting record.
Yeah, so happy to describe that a little further. So Buckeye Pipeline, as many people on this meeting are probably aware, it's two 12-inch diameter pipes that run in the Bay Ridge branch from Sunset Park, and they run up to basically Fresh Pond Junction, which is in just south of Middle Village. And my understanding is they carry jet fuel effectively for LaGuardia and JFK. They've been in the corridor for decades, and the project is going to require us to relocate the Buckeye pipeline in certain areas. So right now, what we're doing is we are in the survey work we're doing, we're locating it so we actually have physical uh, definitive information as to where it's located. And then when we layer on our designs, that's when we figure out like where it needs to go. So it is something that it's going to be a challenge. It's another thing in the right of way that we have a lot of things going on there. There's the freight train, of course. There's going to be the light rail trains. We mentioned the stormwater before, a lot of communications equipment. So there's a lot going on in a very small space. But we do anticipate needing to relocate it in some places, and by relocating I mean within the existing corridor. We're not talking about taking it out of the corridor. And we have been talking with Buckeye Pipeline about this for the last couple of years. So we have good dialogue going.
Thanks for that. And I'll also add that in my office's conversations with Buckeye, they're not alarmed at all. They have total confidence that this will move along without incident. And then I think in the chat, Regine was kind enough to find, oh, I thought I saw something. 851 East 16th Street is probably the address that I was not remembering. So we can follow up on that.
East 15th, yeah.
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 Thanks.
Thanks, Shawn. We made a note, but let's connect afterward for sure on that
Sounds
one.
good.
I also just want to flag, I forgot to mention this during the presentation, but we do have a survey up that is live on IBX. It has, a couple of many questions that we've put together on specific things we'd like to hear your feedback on. There are also some open-ended questions if there's anything you'd like to tell us that we haven't asked. Please make sure to share this with anyone who maybe couldn't make the meeting. Though I know, Shawn, you will post this and anyone can sort of scan this code and let us know what feedback you have or what you want to see. We'll also drop off some hard copies of this on a flyer so that you can pass along to anybody who might be coming to the district office or at any other kind of community events. But just want to make sure we have this, we spotlight this for anyone who couldn't join today.
Under the projects tab on the Community Board 14 website is a pretty robust record keeping of the IBX project. So we'll add this to it, but people should know that all of the materials that you send out get posted under our projects page. I think there's one last question before we could get back to Nora to move on, and that's from Carl.
Can folks hear me? Fantastic. So good evening. So thank you so much for this presentation. It's just a ask for the survey. I see it says it's available in English and Spanish, and just asking to expand the availability of languages. And so the corridor has so many languages, so CB14 in no order Urdu, Haitian Creole, right? We have Russian, we have so many. And so just an ask like, I'm glad it's available in two languages, the ask for multiple languages, just because as you go up the corridor, you're going to run into all different kinds of languages as well. So that's that one. And then if there's a situation where MTA is unable to offer the survey in additional languages, then at least letting people know what resources are available for them, whether it's like through whatever browser or other available resources for them to do that, just because there's a ton of input and stuff that you would be getting even like exponentially greater if you're able to expand the languages that are available for those surveys. So that's it for me.
Thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it, and I think we'll take that back and implement it for this. I also do want to say that we do have our materials, our other materials translated in all Title VI languages, and also for the workshops. We haven't put out our flyer yet, but you'll see when we do, there will be a note that says, if you need any translation services for any language, please let us know and in advance, and that way we'll coordinate it so that it's available at the workshop, so that even if it's not one of the Title VI, we can accommodate. But really, thank you for that feedback.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Okay, great. I believe there are no further questions. Not that I can see from the side, but great. Thank you to our presenters. This was great information, and it will be on the CB14 website. We're going to move on to our next agenda item. And I guess our presenters, you do not have to stay further. The next agenda item is our student safety project on Coney Island Ave for MS 890 and PS 889. Our presenter is Fernando Cantelli de Castro from the New York City Department of Transportation.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here. I'm here with my director of the school safety unit, Nick Carey, and I'm the project manager at the school safety unit. So today we're gonna be presenting a small, very, very small project compared to what you just saw um, in Coney Island Avenue. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Let me know if you have any issues seeing it. I'm not very used to using WebEx. Can you see my screen? Awesome, great. So as you were saying, is a school safety project from Turner Place to Hinckley Place. Is this section of Coney Island Avenue in front of PS 890? I know it. I know it. So, but there's like a PS and an MS, PS 889 and MS 890. Sorry. So as we're saying, this is just a draft of our proposal. It's a very small intervention, but we want to hear your feedback, and we want to first give you a little bit of background of why we are working here at this location. So as you might know, DOT and especially our team has highlighted a series of areas in New York City that are what we call youth injury priority areas, where injuries of the youth are much higher in comparison with the total population or total number of injuries. And this is a part of the Vision Zero plan, which is an interagency. So it's all the agencies in New York City working towards reducing traffic fatalities and injuries to zero. The identify areas that you can see in purple of this area in Brooklyn are especially located on the section that I think is not your community board, is on the western side of Coney Island Avenue, but nevertheless is still a concern of us to work in here. The project is actually located in the orange dot. As we're saying, this is as you see, that the plan of the area that we're going to be working on, Coney Island Avenue, Turner Place, and Hinckley Place, and the school is in purple, PS 889 and MS 890, which are two schools with 700 students that are coming in and out during arrival and dismissal from different points of that site. As you can see, this is a slide that explains the injury data. In yellow, you see total number of injuries per intersection, and of those injuries, the severe injuries are, in this case, there's no fatalities, but the severe injuries, how many of those were severe injuries? So as you can see, there's a total in this section of Coney Island of 65 injuries between 2021 and the end of 2025. 3 of them were severe, and pedestrians and cyclists make up to 17% of the injuries in this section of Coney Island Avenue. 4 of them were youth, were young people under 18, and 7 pedestrians were injured. Out of those 7, 2 were actually crossing with the signal, so were crossing when they were supposed to cross, and 3 of them were crossing mid-block. Let's look at the shape, the morphology of the street, the existing conditions, and why there's some of them are concerning. So as we see Coney Island Avenue from this section of Coney Island Avenue is actually 70 feet between curb to curb. That's the area we can work with. And there are 2 travel lanes per direction. There are turn bays in the middle to turn into the adjacent streets. It's also a local track route, and it's also a street, a corridor where multiple express bus lines and also one standard bus line go through. In this section, what you can see is looking towards the north. So the school is this blue building with a small, garden in the front, and then has a 15-foot sidewalk, which is kind of like generous, is great. But, there's a very long roadway to cross every day for the students. And the traffic signal was recently installed at this point in Turner Place and Coney Island Avenue, but it's still 70 feet long that little kids, little humans with their parents, and also middle school students have to cross in a short amount of time. So they're exposed to moving traffic for that entirety of time. Also, one of the things that I want to highlight here, the arrows are the directions of the streets adjacent to it. So that's why we have the turning lanes, because Turner Place is actually like Coney Island divides them. So on the east, they go to the east, and on the west side of Coney Island, they go to the west, which kind of like results in circuitous trips. Like if you want to go to, the west side of Turner Place, the east side of Turner Place, you actually have to turn around Church Avenue. So there's not like a constant direction. Coney Island is like a divider in this sense. Another thing that we've observed in front of the school is illegal U-turn. So vans or cars do this U-turn sometimes on top of the crosswalks, which is very concerning and create very dangerous conditions for pedestrians and even for drivers. So this is just a draft plan. We want to show it to you. We want to get your feedback. It's kind of a very simple idea, but we think it's a great improvement for the school. So as a proposal overview, we want to convert Turner Place to eastbound between East 8th and Coney Island Avenue. And Hinckley Place to westbound between Coney Island Avenue and Stratford Road. So Hinckley Place becomes westbound and Turner Place becomes eastbound for the entirety of the street. That's going to give us the opportunity to remove those turn bays, and we're going to be able to build a new concrete median in front of the school. This concrete median can provide a pedestrian refuge for the pedestrians that are crossing Coney Island Avenue, so they can stay there while they, they're waiting for the signal if they don't make it all the way to the 70 feet, and can really eliminate the possibility for any U-turns to happen in front of the school. We also want to install a small painted curb extension in the corner of Hinckley Place and Coney Island Avenue in the southwest corner to reduce the distance of the crosswalk, the length of the crosswalk. So it's just very simple. It's just 2 strict direction changes to make it consistent. This will facilitate, will make less circuitous strips. It will also be great because one of the things that we want around schools in every school frontage is right-hand side door access for school buses. So Turner Place will become great for buses to load and unload too, because the buses will, be in the direction where the door for the kids to come in and out is on the right place on the side of the school. Also give us the room that I was saying for that concrete pedestrian island. So as you can see here, this is the existing condition in this picture, and this is what we are proposing, just a concrete median, and that will reduce the crosswalks, and will provide a pedestrian island, and then a painted curb extension in this corner. That's it. We'll just change directions. We'll work on the, small changes on the signals for the direction changes, but that's mostly the entirety of the work. Just so we're saying, a median provides refuge for pedestrians and really eliminates the possibility for illegal U-turns on the street. Main objective as a school safety unit is to just really care about the safety of the students that come in and out of school during arrival and dismissal. Our work is also, we visited the site multiple times during arrival and dismissal. We also have worked with the school in different, curb regulations to improve school loading, to improve all the things around it. And, our main objective is to make it safer and more consistent for all the residents around it. That's it. Let me know if you have any questions, concerns, comments. We're here to answer them.
Great. Thank you so much, Fernando. If anybody would like to unmute themselves, I know Shawn has more visibility on who.
Yeah, there are two hands up, Matt and then Ro, and Benjamin Bendet, the co-chair, has also joined us, is here as well. Matt, Ro, then Jeffrey, then Liz. Go ahead, Matt.
Hi, thanks so much for bringing us this project and presenting this. I think the concrete island thing is a great idea, and you should definitely go forward with it. I think one thing I've observed here is that the intersection at Church Avenue and Coney Island Avenue, which is kind of in the scope here, feels even more dangerous to me. And I know that a couple of people have been killed there in the last decade or so. And I definitely see a lot of students crossing there as well. I mean, the B35 is there. There's the pizza place on the corner and businesses up and down Church Avenue. So it's a natural place to cross. So I'd love to see DOT come back with some proposals for improving safety here. To give one idea, this is kind of a weird 5-point intersection because of the way that Albemarle Road comes into it. And when I see cars turning in, when I cross Albemarle Road on Coney Island Avenue, it feels like there's very little residential traffic to the single family homes there. And it's not too hard to get into the neighborhood there. So just people kind of cutting through to avoid the lights on Church Avenue. So it seems like a good place where we don't really need Albemarle Road to connect to Coney Island Avenue, and that would simplify the light time in there. It would simplify the intersection. We definitely see there's unusual rules there with the flashing red light and other things like that, and drivers don't follow them at all, basically. So that would be one small change, but I'd love to see even bigger changes, like the things that could probably help the whole Coney Island Avenue corridor, but that would be a good place to start. Thank you.
Yeah, so we definitely agree that, all the issues that you have highlighted, especially at that intersection, are concerning. There's also a quick curb that has been destroyed in this last, season. We're working on getting it replaced, all these things. But as we were telling the schools, because we met with the school several times, is that this is a start, as a way to start in front of the school. And then obviously I think DOT has to work thoroughly on the entire corridor of Coney Island Avenue, and Church and also Beverly Road are two concerning points. As you see, the numbers are very high, and we have to work on that. But in order to make, one of the things that I also wanted to highlight is that we're not talking about a 20-year plan. We're talking about implementing this summer. so the school has it ready for the next school year. So yes, it's a first step.
Awesome. Glad to hear this is coming soon.
And Fernando, thank you so much for the presentation, for the outreach you've done to both schools that are co-located in this spot, and for your presentation tonight. You started to answer one of my questions, which was timing. As you mentioned, they're busy schools, 700 kids in our community, and wondered if this would impact either our spring or fall classes.
Our intention is to coordinate with our crews, because this concrete work is done in-house, so it's done by DOT employees. And hopefully we can do it in August when school is out of session. But yeah, definitely, if that's not feasible because our crews are limited, we'll definitely talk to the school, coordinate with school, take any safety measures that might be needed.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we usually work on during August.
Thank you. And I saw the plans, but couldn't really tell. Do you have a sense of how wide the concrete barrier would be that would serve as a pedestrian refuge? And I asked that because, as you mentioned, one of the schools is a middle school, and most kids actually walk there on their own. And I would just hate to have it be like a false sense of safety. The speed on Coney Island Avenue is very fast, especially when cars aren't triple parked, and just hate for a kid to have that false sense of refuge, and they're there and then cars are speeding by them upwards of 50 miles an hour there when they can.
So as I tell my bosses a lot of times, I think middle schoolers are the most dangerous because they don't have parents taking them to school, but they think they're adult, like they're old enough to behave in a proper way in the street.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. Our concrete median is 8 feet wide, which is kind of like pretty wide. We just didn't want to like affect the moving lanes or the width of the moving lanes. It's a pretty tight road. So, 8 feet parking lanes, 11 feet travel lanes, and we just can have what we can have is an 8 foot concrete median. So, but it's pretty generous.
Great. Okay, thank you. And I know in the schematic there was some street trees planted, and this is definitely a street tree desert. There's 0 tree canopy, and this is definitely a school that has kids with respiratory illness issues, and I would love to see DOT prioritize making sure that this median is planted with several street trees.
Someone wants to jump. So
I think,
go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead. No, answer the question.
Sorry. So, yeah, we are talking to DPR. There's Department of Parks and Recreation. There's a concern because there's utilities underneath that go in the middle of the road. So there's a lot of utilities that are not that do not affect trees or planted trees, but the sewer is something that concerns parks because the DEP sometimes makes sewer work every 15 or 10, 20 years, which would mean that they would have to cut the entirety of the trees and destroy them. So we are working with the DEP and DPR to see if there's a possibility. That was our dream. We are working on it, but there's nothing we want not promise here. That's why we remove them from the drawings, because we want to be mindful.
I see. Okay, thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing updates about that.
Go ahead, Benjamin.
Hey, first of all, thank you for the presentation. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Nora for stepping in, and I appreciate that. Just wanted to point out a few procedural things just to make sure we're on the same page. Seems like some of this is actually in CB12 territory. Have you reached out to CB12?
Yeah, we'll be talking to them in the next meeting in April.
All right, great. And we would appreciate if you can send us a quick update once that happens, if there's any feedback in terms of safety. Obviously, safety is important. But could we go back to your first slide for a second?
Yeah,
the slide regarding the incidents. Right, that one, perfect. So we're looking at that. We see a lot of the issues are moving motor vehicle, motorized two-wheelers. And I'm not questioning, and I'm not saying that student safety isn't important, but I'm just focusing on the fact that it seems like a lot of the incidents here are really motor vehicles and motorized two-wheelers. How many incidents do you know of that involve students at the school or teachers even?
So we don't know any specific incident that was like this is actually not triggered by a specific incident. Thank God. We're very happy that we're working here. This
Good to
is
hear.
school. This school was actually in our radar since it was built. That we needed to improve. We needed to get that signal built. We work really hard placing the schools, helping SCA to place the schools in the right place. So it's not directly like a number that a kid needs to get hit for us to intervene. But we think that with our work, we really improve safety for everybody, not only for pedestrians. Like those U-turns are not going to happen. I was there last week to review the site again, and I just saw crazy fast vehicle trying to turn into Turner Place, not even using the U-turn lane, going over us. So we really think that the concrete and the will deter those behaviors and will help every street user to be safe around the school. But yeah, obviously our lens is always through the safety of the children, but everybody else will. In our projects, we have experience that we know we're able to reduce all injuries.
Got it. And I follow also Regine Ford. She asked about the width of it. I didn't really hear an answer. Maybe I cut out. Do you have a proposed width?
Is an 8-foot wide curb from curb to curb median.
Got it. And just another procedural point to the I don't think it's ready yet because you didn't talk to CB14. I think there needs to be communication with them before we can actually make a request to the board. But if in case you want us to make a request to the board, once we get there, just let us know once we're at that stage. And one more thing also, I was just checking in, have you talked to the FDNY regarding the concrete island?
So I'm gonna ask here for help from my boss, Nick Carey. We are in constant communication with FDNY for every project we do. Nick, are you there?
That's correct. To my understanding, we haven't met with them personally yet. They have been notified about the project, and we're waiting to hear comments. But I'm hopeful because this is very similar to other projects installed in different parts of the Coney Island Avenue corridor, including parts in this neighborhood. So we are working with them on it.
Okay, gotcha. And good luck. I just, I hear a very ambitious date to get it done by the summer. So I'm wishing you a lot of luck, but I don't know how fast the wheels will turn on this one, but I guess we'll see.
If you can help us get it done, if the community board can support us, that will get it done faster. So
right, so that's what I was saying before. In order for us to really support, I mean, I guess I can try to bring up a section of it to the board, but I think we really need CB12's approval also, because if you only get our approval and you don't get their support and we're not talking, right? I mean, can't really get it done. So I think after, that's what I was saying, after you get the CB12's approval and send it, shoot something quickly to us. Shawn is very awesome and very responsive, and then we can move from there. That's what I think is the best way.
thank you. Thank you for letting us know.
Jeffrey Thomas, then Liz Denise.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
I apologize that my camera isn't working today. I'm really excited about this project. I live a couple blocks south of this, where you folks installed, as part of the CIA and Cortellia improvements, you did some improvements on the 2 blocks on the north and south. So I live on Slocum, and that has been great. There's sort of a pedestrian refuge there. I think one thing I'd say, and sort of going off of, I think what Matt said earlier, and what couple other things I'm saying, like, this, I think this goes to the whole Coney Island corridor. I want to encourage you to think about what you can do with the entire corridor, how this fits in towards how we can make the entire area safer. We had an incident less than a year ago, I believe, at Foster, a couple blocks even further south in Coney Island, if I'm not misremembering, where there were some kids who were on an e-bike and got killed by a turning driver. I think this whole corridor is, you said you saw it yourself, speeding cars, just really dangerous to cross. And so anything you can do to think about, so I'm glad that you said this, but I want to really sort of encourage anything you can do to think about is a design that we can sort of scale out to the, extend out to the whole corridor. I would hope we can do something there. One thing I would also say, just in terms of the width of the pedestrian island and sort of the street layout, is there are many parts, and I believe directly one block north of this area in particular, where because of the I think body shops that are located there, there is double parking. There's sort of cars extending out the street. There's loading and unloading. I rarely see more than one lane of actual traffic in Coney Island. So as fast as the cars go, as much as it is a truck route, et cetera, I rarely see more than one lane of actual traffic usable. And so this is an area where there aren't any body shops. It's a school on this side of the street. So I'm wondering if there's designs that allow you to extend the pedestrian refuge even more, potentially at the cost of reducing the number of travel lanes on this block. And then, again, going to the idea of how does this fit with the entire corridor and what can you do? So that's my comments. And thank you for this. I'm really excited you're trying to make it happen this year. I know we've had issues in this community district with DOT projects getting stalled. So I'm really, really excited by this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, we agree that it could be a solution for a lot of, instances in Coney Island Avenue, but it's also will have to, be like turning lanes would need to be removed. And that's also something that even for this small project, our engineers looked at the impacts, and they didn't identify major traffic impacts in this small intervention. But of course, if we extend this intervention to the entirety of the corridor, it will have a lot of impacts in traffic flow and congestion. So yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Liz.
just let me just add to that
Sorry, Nick.
one just brief comment on that is that we actually did a traffic analysis of this section, and we looked into the feasibility of removing a lane in each direction, because we noticed the same thing, that often, especially when there's crazy double parking going on, it only functions as one lane. And we were disappointed to learn that, at least during the peak hours, removing a lane on Coney Island Avenue looks like it would have an impact. And I think there are instances where we can accept a traffic impact, but we have to think about what impacts it might have elsewhere. And since the sort of the nearby parallel routes are all small residential streets in the adjacent neighborhoods, we felt like that would be a tougher sell. But I think you brought up a lot of the tough points of the whole corridor. That it's a truck route. It's got all these so much double parking in the retail corridors, and the double parking for the chop shops, and it's such a wide street, and I think all of that adds up to part of why there's really never been a comprehensive plan for the whole corridor. What we've often seen over the years are interventions like this, an intersection or two at a time. And one of the other challenges is, in such a wide street, we really want to have left turn lanes. We really don't want people rushing and turning left to get away from the traffic behind them. And extending this treatment to the north and south, we looked at extending this up to Coney Island Avenue, and that would require removing the turn lane at Coney Island Avenue, or I'm sorry, at Church Avenue. And those are both truck routes, and we have to make sure those are connected. So it's definitely a challenging corridor. We've had a lot of complaints over the years, and we're committed to continuing this work. Thank you.
All right, I think it's my turn. Correct. Anyway, I have a few points on a variety of these things. Obviously, first off, I just want to say I'm really glad you're looking at this. This is a super dangerous street. I see tons of school children walking here. I see school children walking in very bizarre configurations to avoid a lot of these crossings as well, because they're very dangerous. two things that seem really obvious that we could do really easily without needing to really trigger a traffic study in addition to this would include daylighting all of these intersections. I know there's a little bit of it at Hinckley and Coney Island on the southwest corner, but I will just say that it's not just an on-approach issue. Every single corridor, people rush through, people turn through, it becomes weird parking things, etc. It's very, very hard for people to see me. And I'm an adult who is, a lot taller than many middle schoolers, especially the younger ones. I'd also add that it would be really helpful to create various types of loading zones as part of the current parking, metering more of the parking to allow to stop that double parking problem. Because as someone who lives right in this area, I can tell you 100% of the time, there are not two travel lanes during busy times. And then when a lot of the really dangerous speeding and other things happens is often when there's very little traffic, very late at night. And so it does become a 2-lane corridor then. And I think that there's a lot more work that would need to be done there. And finally, I just add that, both considering that DCP is going to start looking at this area for additional housing opportunity and rezoning and flooding and just general issues sometime. I think it's in the next couple of years. But in that, the one thing I think traffic studies seem to miss sometimes is different types of vehicles that are on the streets. Like right now, the bus is really unreliable. It bunches a lot because of all of these issues. This is a real opportunity to create better bus lanes in the area or other things to make sure we're moving people and not just vehicles. And I would love to, I know that that's outside of the purview of like the schools issue, but I think it is really connected to this because I do see a lot of, students of various ages on the bus as well. And finally, and I know it might not be appropriate to this exact street, but the closest protected bike lane infrastructure in this area is Ocean Parkway. And there are so many delivery workers who are biking up and down Coney Island in its current configuration. And also, I see families doing this occasionally because there's not really great connections north-south in the area without going really far out of their way. So just even if it's not on just something else that keeps getting kind of missed in DOT presentation or DOT's current work on this in this area is making sure we improve north-south connectivity, because we know that people aren't gonna pedal or walk themselves many blocks out of the way when there's a more direct route, even when that's kind of dangerous to them. But yeah, for immediate term things, I'd really support trying to fix some of that double parking and instituting some sort of hardened daylighting across these areas, because even with these changes, which I think are really good and really strong, the lack of just visibility of when pedestrians are at those corners in this school area is really, really troubling to me, and could be something we can fix. Thanks.
Do you want to
Should-
respond to that?
So yeah, we
Or-
will definitely look at the daylighting intervention and expanding what we're doing in that corner to other locations. We did before, but maybe now that you are asking more, we can, look harder at it and get back to you. Nick, anything else you want to say? I mean, your questions were so like expert level that I'd rather have Nick respond to them, the PBLs and all of that.
Yeah, I think we agree to a large extent. We would like to facilitate better biking connections, better bus connections, better visibility. I think we're on the same page.
But,
And with this city planning, if you have a big rezoning plan for the area, and that especially if that changes, how some of these light industrial businesses work, that could be a real opportunity and a special time to make changes and think about what we want the corridor to be.
Yep.
Stay
I know that
tuned.
DOT is always looking at
And
this, so
then
just wanted to
Nora
thank you
and
for your attention.
sorry, Nora was next, and then Eric. Regina, I'm going to put people who haven't spoken up top. Nora, then Eric, JS.
Okay. Just off the top of my head, as a mom who used to walk her child to the B68 on Church through the school years, yeah, it's a rough intersection for sure. Maybe my thought is connecting with the MTA and seeing if maybe during the school year they can add a bus stop closer to the school. I don't know if that's even remotely possible, and take it away when school is not in session. Maybe that could help minimize a lot of the movement of small people and adults with their children that are trying to get to these schools. Just loading that.
There's currently a
you.
bus stop in front of the school, no? But it's located here, and it's in multiple instances is parked by parents and picking up the kids from the elementary school, which is also a concern. But yeah, there's a bus stop. Another thing that, we have been working with the school in loading, so we have increased the school loading around the schools. And a lot of these concerns about, daylighting or changes, it also comes, in detriment of street parking. And that's also a concern for the many communities. So we always try to balance that out.
Eric?
Hello. Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. I also wanted to speak up in strong support of daylighting these intersections with, hardened daylighting. And, I think about street parking, like saying that parents will be they'll double park in the bus lane to drop their kids off. I think once, it's safer for people to take alternative forms of transit, that will become less of a problem. So there'll be a virtuous cycle. So yeah, definitely everything you can do to support bike connectivity and just making it safer to cross the street. So yeah, big thumbs up for hardened daylighting. But thank you for all the improvements.
And then I'm going to jump in really quickly here too. First of all, I want to let you know that I'm happy to facilitate or expedite FD&Y's comment on the plan because it's the local firehouse on Cortellia Road that I think would be most directly impacted. And then I'm not sure what determines or how DOT determines or names something a youth injury priority area. Also, maybe revisit that name because that sounds terrible. Maybe it should be a youth injury prevention priority area. But so just
YIPA?
trying
You
to
don't like YIPA?
understand that no. Well, the acronym is fine, but yeah, if you could speak to how that's determined and how we would know, sort of like in a public realm, like where these other designations exist.
Mick, you want to jump?
Yeah, I can speak to that. We put out a report in 2024. It's a mouthful. It's called Safe Street. I can't remember it all.
Safe School, Safe Kids.
Safe Street, Safe School, Safe Kids, a pedestrian and bike master plan.
Okay.
And in it kind of outlines the methodology in detail. It's basically two overlapping inputs. Thank you. One is the density of youth injuries, like the number of youth pedestrian and bike injuries and fatalities per square mile. And the second input is the proportion of pedestrian and bicycle injuries that are youth. And that is in part because there are parts of town where youth injuries are overrepresented. And those are often areas where that fall out of our priorities. Otherwise, they're areas that are maybe more auto-oriented, where the adults are all driving and it's only the kids that are walking and biking. So we look at both of those equally and put them on top of each other.
Thanks. I'll give that a read. I appreciate that. Rosine?
Yeah, thank you, Shawn. These proposed changes are great, and the more I hear, the more I like it. I do just want to speak to some points that were earlier made, I believe by Benjamin, regarding the number of crashes. There's 2 school crossing guards at these intersections at all hours because of how visibly dangerous these intersections are. That's a unique step by DOE. Some schools have none. This one has not 1 but 2 because of how it's clearly a issue to anyone who sees it. And this impacts, it artificially lowers, thank goodness, the number of KSI, killed and seriously injured, and pedestrian involved incidents there are at these intersections. So I bring that up not to say that these new interventions are not needed, but I think the crossing guards would tell you they see wild stuff there every day. But also when you're looking at the numbers, it's important to note why they might be, anytime I see a number of a kid who's injured, that's too much, but they may not be high enough for some to think that this intervention is needed. And you mentioned the new crossing at Turner Place that was installed. I just want to remind everyone, the one reason why our council member Rita Joseph of the 40th District advocated for that to go in. I don't know if anyone remembers when the truck crashed directly across from the school in March 2024 and entered a building. It had gained such speed on Coney Island Avenue directly in front of the school during the school day that it actually breached the sidewalk and crashed into a building and made the building structurally unsound to the point that it had to be vacated or redone. So I know that double parking, triple parking absolutely plagues Coney Island Avenue permanently, but there are instances where vehicles are able to gain speed that this would also really help address. And I just want to bring that recent news into our collective memory that there are absolutely dangers. And had that truck been on the other side of the road, it could have easily breached the school building. So, and I can drop a link to the news report of that vehicle crashing into the building across from this school at this intersection. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you for letting us know that. One other thing that we want to highlight is that we generally design our work without relying on human controls. Crossing guards get sick, they miss a day, and that day should not be less safe than, the day that the crossing guard is there. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. They're there because of the issue, but they're not
yeah.
permanently solving it. Yeah. Thank you.
And one day they might not be there anymore. So we have to be careful.
Mhm.
Okay, Benjamin, Nora, I don't see any additional hands raised.
All right, so let's take it over to the next part. So first of all, thank you, Fernando. Thank you to Nick for coming down. And we look forward to hearing a lot more from you in the future about this. And as I said before, wish you success on this.
Thank you so much.
So
Thank
at
you.
this point, so feel free to drop off or feel free to keep the party going.
Have a good evening. Bye.
So the next part of the meeting is a discussion of district need statement and priorities of CD14.
And I think that we were going to postpone that to the next meeting. Musa couldn't be here unexpectedly this evening and wanted to be part of the conversation. So just to sort of tee it up so that it's a robust conversation next time, that this was a review of the district needs statement, and I can send to the unless you want to reread the whole thing, which I welcome you to do, but I could send sort of the section of the DNS out to this committee in advance so that you have the excerpt and the budget priorities. And then you could also review the sort of nonsense responses we get from agencies to those budget requests. I think, Benjamin, jump in if I'm not framing this right, but I think the idea is like to bring committee conversation into the DNS a little bit, more, and then, so that everybody has a stake. And when those agencies respond, we as a community and you as a community board, have the process in mind to which you're holding them accountable, if that makes sense. Just trying to get more skin in the game here.
Absolutely nothing to add. So if that's, I'm sorry, Liz, you have your hand raised.
I was just going to ask if I just assume we're going into other business, so just had something for that.
Sure. What do you want to bring up to the board?
I was just going to say, I noticed some of the things in the DOT presentation today about the school safety are similar types of interventions that people around the world are starting to call things like low traffic neighborhoods, where you try to reduce turns on and off of a street and be more clever about this. And I just thought that that might be a great future topic for this committee because, you
It's
know,
already
given
yeah, we're already
okay,
lined
perfect.
up for a
No, that's
presentation.
lovely.
So
Just wanted
we
to
totally anticipated it.
queue it up.
But I want to say something because I know that you're a dedicated advocate, Liz. But I want to say this to you and to the other board members who are on the call. One of the things I reacted to when this request or idea for presentation came up is the fact that we have been trying to get a sort of slow zone type neighborhood thing happening in West Midwood for a really long time. The level of advocacy, the number of requests, the amount of follow-up, and just really almost blood, sweat, and tears that goes into getting DOT to be responsive to our requests from the community level. Like, I don't sit in my office making this up for any block whatsoever. It comes to us from those community members. It is their lived experience. So if DOT is going to be blasé about that, and then these organizations are going to come in and like drop something down that they figured out from I don't know where, and it's not that it's not valued, but I would like to know that that advocacy organizations are supporting what's bubbling up from the community level, and happy to then dovetail that into grand schemes and big ideas. But I really do expect that sort of level of support from advocates.
I think the other thing I was just going to mention is I think it would be cool if we could do some sort of like more interactive workshop for this, where we can maybe put this together and have like a little mini report we send out to folks from it. Just because, part of why I bring this up is because seeing the borough president's office partner on this, like I think there is maybe more of an appetite for doing work like this, and maybe we can use it both to re-up requests like you've mentioned for West Midwood to doing things like this, and also just I do think it's a little hard to have it as just a presentation, response versus like I think some of the IBX workshops that were being discussed earlier, where they had like maps and Post-its and things like that, would be a really helpful way for us to do that. I've organized a couple workshops like that in the past, not with this exact thing, but I would be happy to help collaborate with anyone who would come, so that it's not people. Because I don't think the goal is to have people talk at us and be prescriptive. I think it is something that we want to work on together. But I do think it's something that's just a little difficult to our typical format. And I don't think that's anything about our format being bad. Just this is one of the challenges of doing, large community engagement on complicated topics.
Well, to that point, I think most of this is the DOT has to follow certain guidelines and certain administrative codes in order to check off boxes. So they're telling us what they want to do, as opposed to really responding to our requests. It's not necessarily, in my opinion, a workshop issue. It's more opinion. It's more of an issue of DOT doesn't care and they just do what they want, and then it comes back to us, and they're like, "Well, we want you to approve of our projects before we even listen to yours, if we'll even listen to yours." Right. So I don't know. I mean, if you want to bring up a workshop, I'm happy to look at it. You can send it to us, and you send us your ideas, and we're happy to look into that. But in terms of actually getting the DOT to do something, that's an entirely different animal, which is not something that will probably be resolved with a workshop. It might be resolved with other tactics, but I don't know what the appetite is of people to do certain tactics. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I just wanted to note, I was just trying to speak to Sean's concern about sometimes when advocates maybe come in and drop an idea, or, about how we can facilitate a better discussion that's more community inclusive about gathering these ideas and maybe presenting them. I do think one of the things that I've seen a little bit is that, I guess just in other things in the Brooklyn area, when community boards have come up with like ideas and done engagement for a while, different agencies sometimes pick them up. I'm not going to say DOT is great at this, but I think we all share a lot of these concerns with requests not always being handled in the urgency and that the community deserves. But I do think that this is a good way of making sure that when we're introducing ideas and things to members of the public and so forth, it's in a way that's very understandable and collaborative, in a way that is just a little more difficult when we're just heads on a screen.
Heard. Go ahead, Nina.
Yep.
Going on here. I'm sorry. My just getting quirky. This is actually more a comment rather than a question. I'm just really glad to see a project that's, proactive. I mean, the fact that pedestrians have gotten hurt in this area is significant, and that whole stretch is very troublesome. I, for one, can probably count on one hand the number of times I get to make a right-hand turn from the right-hand lane going home on Foster, off of Coney Island Avenue. But it's so oftentimes the response has been, well, no one's gotten killed there yet. And that's what finally prompts action. So kudos for not waiting for that to happen and having a design and a plan. So thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Seeing no other hands, I guess I think we can. Oh, Regine.
Yes, one quick thing, Benjamin. It might have just been like one word I misheard. When you
No,
were
sure.
talking about the school safety plan, I think you said CB14 wouldn't be able to approve this until CB12 does. I understand wanting to communicate, collaborate, but I just want to make sure I understand. CB14 could put forward approval of this plan if hypothetically CB12 did not. CB14 does not need them who are just on the other side. One is on one side of the street, one is on the other. CB14 wouldn't look to their approval as a condition for approval. Is that correct?
Well, I don't understand I understand your question, but I'm going to reject the premise. The issue is here that it's kind of dysfunctional. If CB12 tells them, and because the sidewalk barrier, because these raised sidewalks technically are going to be very close to each other, it makes very little sense practically to approve of one thing. Then CB12 may say, oh, well, there are things that we don't like here, want to change things. And then either they come back to us or they start work on this only to come back later, creates much more disruption. What I'm just telling them is wait for a few weeks, wait a little more, make sure that everybody's on the same page so we can do this all at once.
Well, and let me jump in on this too, if you don't mind, Benjamin, because I speak to Barry Spitzer all the time. We share the longest border between, the CB14 and a neighboring board. So I think it is, coordination and being careful to not comment on a side of the project that isn't in the district. So we would have to be, I don't imagine that there's going to be, I don't think that CB12 is going to be a huge barrier to this project, but to the extent that there might be different points of view, we'll nuance whatever the board decides it wants its comment to be. But I do think that coordinating with our neighbors and ensuring that we're hearing the same thing and aiming for the same goals is important. But I speak to Barry all the time. It's not like we need some sort of, I don't know, formalized process by which to determine their conversations. Also, their meeting is open to the public for anybody who wants to join the CB12 Transportation Committee meeting once it gets scheduled. But it's something I brought to DOT's attention from the get-go. These schools are, on the CB12 side of the street. The change in the one-way is on the CB12 side of the street. And this is my own opinion in terms of how the process should work. I feel like I don't understand why you wouldn't get FDNY's input on the pedestrian island before bringing it to the public. It just procedurally, the interagency coordination should go before the publicly facing presentation.
Okay, and that's exactly right, Shawn. That's things a lot better than me, which is why, as I said before, she's very awesome. There's one more hand, Liz, and then I'm going to say we're probably going to call it. I don't want it to necessarily go back and forth. I think we're more on the same page. I don't really have necessarily an objection to the idea in general. I just wanted to make sure it's done right. That's all. So with that said, Liz.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's typically been our board's policy that when things affect multiple districts and thinking of large things like City of Yes and so forth, we comment on the issues as it affects our residents, and we don't need to wait for other boards to do that. So I think that if we want to do something, we should move forward. I don't know if DOT is formally asking it, but I just want to make sure we're not trying to like wait for some other process of another community board. I know just it seems really difficult with having two groups of 50 volunteers, go back and forth.
It's
when
not
we're
difficult, Liz. I work with them all the time, and we have to be their neighbors
guess-
throughout. So it's
sorry.
just being respectful
No,
of both sides of the border. It's just,
guess my
it's just
comment-
respect.
My comment is not that we should not respect their opinions, but I think that we should not censor our own or like hold back from giving our own support or disapproval of something, because I think collectively, like, we should be giving our input, being mindful of what they are, and obviously love to hear any information you get from their district manager and so forth regarding these projects, so that we can be thoughtful about it. But I don't think that it makes sense for us to procedurally try to like wait back and forth and make sure both people agree before we would potentially agree on something. That's just never how this board has operated during my time.
Here you live. I disagree. I think that there are times to make your opinion heard, and there are times to wait before you publicly make your opinion heard. As Shawn said, there doesn't have to be a formal process. She can talk to Barry Spitzer at any point, and we can work this out. My point to the DOT is slow down, slow your roll. You're way ahead of your game. Just make sure you check all the boxes that you need to check. Reach out to the FDNY, for example. Reach out to CB12, and then come right back to us. As I told him, good luck. I don't think that he's going to be able to necessarily get it by summer, but I'm not standing in his way. They're standing in their own way. And just pushing.
I just make briefly is that my understanding is none of these designs are so unique that they're not present in other places in the city. That is typical of DOT's work. That I think that it make. Please let me finish what I'm saying about this. Because I think I understand you have an objection on process. I just want to note that I think it's, given that we are a recommendation body and so forth, like it makes sense that these processes kind of move together. It allows DOT to do things like making schools safer for kids a little faster. And that's not to say things don't get incorporated, but I think I think there are reasons that the process happens the way it does. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but I do think that we're starting to use this FDNY thing in a way that just feels very odd, when, overwhelmingly we've heard a lot of people very primarily interested in safety. And I think we could hopefully trust DOT and FDNY to work these things out. If we're not experts on street design, I think that's something that we should leave to them.
Gotcha. Your comments are noted. Seeing that there are no other hands, I guess we'll adjourn for the night. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you. Great meeting.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Yeah, folks.